Hello and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I'm Jason Masker with Stratascale, and we are partnering with CDO Magazine, MIT CDO IQ, and the International Society of Chief Data Officers in a series of interviews. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Nate Murray, Chief Data Officer at Fifth Third Bank. So what's the most important thing that you think comes from the data team or comes from your office specifically to help the rest of the organization more fully understand their role in ensuring data quality?
That's a great question. And I think that's something that we're kind of in I'll call it EDO 3.0, right? Where we've kind of reinvented ourselves several times based on what are we needed to be at the time, or what is the goals of, what is the strategic initiative that we're trying to support and support the goals of the bank and the board. And I think, frankly, where we're at now is we're at how do we scale? And the reality is we've proven that we have the tools and technology to do the capabilities. We've proven that it can be done, meaning just data governance, right? And enterprise data and sort of wing-to-wing data, I'll call it, where it's created here, it's aggregated and transformed here, and it's consumed here, right? We can span all three of those data zones, is what we call them. Data one is kind of the transactional system that creates it, say, any of our systems in our lines of business. And then we would then move it through some transformation or through some aggregation. And then we would obviously apply quality and all these other types of data governance capabilities to it. And then ultimately it's consumed downstream, say by reporting teams or others. And that entire series of zones is what ultimately defines ownership. Data ownership isn't one person who owns this one data element. It's more of a common, we didn't invent this is pretty standard in the industry. A data stewardship model says anybody in that supply chain, whether you're data zone 1, 2, or 3, you're part of the stewardship, which includes all of the governance wing to wing of data. And I think that's something that we continue to mature, right? So I referenced the need to scale. We've proven the capabilities are there. We've proven that we can do this in pockets where necessary with our most critical data. But can we scale this to other big, domains of data that frankly are not quite as important, but still really important? And I think that's where we go, oh man, if we have to do it for, the bulk of our data, it's never going to scale having my organization do it. I think that's where the scale comes. And that's where the need to offer simple tools and self-service and education is really what gets the bank economies of scale for what we're doing, which is publishing standards, which is offering the tools and technology, and is ultimately consulting with our line of business teams on how to do this stuff in modern ways, which frankly, from a lean process or a Six Sigma perspective, it really, really makes a big dent in people's day jobs because they can do stuff for themselves now. They're not waiting for somebody else to do it centrally for them. That person's on vacation this week, I can't get that. We don't want anything like that. We need to make sure that it's all at everybody's fingertips, but then it's in a controlled and governed way. I think that's a big push. It's a big shift, and it's necessary when you go to cloud, because cloud and software as a service and platform as a service, as everything is kind of going that way, regardless of what industry you're from, you have to be able to respond in a self-service way. Otherwise, you have no chance of scaling. So that's where we're at right now in our journey.
Yeah, so it's interesting. You mentioned the scale and time, and you just mentioned the speed of data, which kind of leads into some of my next questions around data transformation, accelerating innovation. When it comes to those types of initiatives and keeping up with the speed of business, the increasing pace of change, what role does data play? And I would pose it do you see it as auxiliary or more foundational? A recent conversation, somebody posed this in a different way. Am I the mission or am I supporting the mission? Where data fitting in?
So obviously I'm a little bit biased, right? So I'm going to say data is the center of everything, right? It's the nexus where all business value is realized, right? I'm the CDO, so what else would I say? Of course, data is really important. It certainly isn't auxiliary. I think, you just look through the kind of historical generations of data, right? Go back a few generations and you had kind of ad hoc data. And it was just in the 80s. Who needs what and where is it? How do I get it into a CSV and email it to them? Not even email in the 80s, I guess. I don't know. And then you get into the 90s and you get into kind of core centralized warehousing. right? You get into the 2000s and you get into laking. And then now we get into, more of a data mesh strategy, data fabric, whatever you guys want to, whatever the common term is for it now. But the data mesh strategy truly tries to take, what worked in ad hoc, what worked in centralized, some of the areas for opportunity, I'll be nice and call the data laking timeframe areas of opportunity, kind of put the goodness of all that together and then really allow, the standards and the self-service and frankly, the automation that we wrapped around a lot of our tech stack to offer the controls and have them be built in day one so that you're not teaching everyone everything that all your data engineers know. They get it right out of the box. I think that's a significant shift when you think about what is modern data as you're trying to build out, in a modern way around the data mesh. The need to have reference data, that's been around a long time. Mastering customer, mastering part, whatever part you're mastering, and being able to key data, that's pretty standard. But then to do it in a way that isn't centralized in an EDW, that's where it starts to go, wait a second, this is kind of like laking. And then laking became, we don't know what that means. And that could mean 5 different things. And how do I know which one to go to? And I don't know all the complexities of the different languages and nuances of storage formats. So how do I simplify all that, standardize all that, and then give a self-service portal to the front of it all? And that essentially abstracts all the scary techie stuff so that the consumers can come with just some basic level of education, know that the controls are there, but extract that business value at the speed that the business needs. And I think that's a really interesting journey. And that's what I'm really excited about coming to work every day, because that's what we're building now.
That's interesting. So there's that. When you think about transformative activity and what we're driving, this is probably related, but what are the initiatives? What do you see as what are the biggest ways that business is going to have to transform to get this done? What do you see as some of the biggest obstacles?
So, your obstacles, I'll just bucket them the standard 3, right? You got people, process, and technology. Those are always the 3 areas where you got to spend time. I would submit technology is the easiest. I've spent a lot of time already talking about platforms and lowering the bar and standard controls and things like that. Technology is not the hard part. I would say that even if you can get people excited and educated, the glue that hooks people to tech is the process. And I think that is where you have to continue to lean into process, because the best tool and the smartest people will only ever be as fast as the process is built to allow. And that process, even though the world is changing around us very quickly and the need for data and generating value from that data is evolving quickly, you can't get mired in the process and you can't circumvent the process either, right? So it's figuring out, how do we lean out how we've worked in the past, how we need to work in the future, and make sure that we're still having the correct controls, that we still are meeting all of our governance requirements, and that we're, especially in banking and insurance and other highly regulated, right? We still have to do all those types of things, but do them in a way that's streamlined so that you can link that really good tech with that really smart analyst in the business so that they can extract that value at the speed that they need, because the process already takes care of the hard part. And I think that's where we spend a lot of time today, really trying to optimize our processes and really trying to make sure that things are built in instead of bolted on. Because anything that's bolted on or needing manual approvals or sitting in a queue waiting on an SLA, it's never going to link that tool with that analyst, because those two things linking together is where the value is created. So we got to spend time to really make that linking efficient. I think process is really where we're leaning in here, where we've leaned in the past, and we've seen huge dividends. So I really think Six Sigma, Lean, and understanding our requirements and thinking about them in modern ways has all kinds of opportunity that we have yet to tap into.
Well, thank you, Nate, for joining us today and for the time. Please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews.